Go ahead and call our board meeting to order. Kathy, please let the record show that all board members are in attendance. Stephen, we'll turn it over to you for our first items.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we are joined by Jalen Romero Renteria from Pipkin Middle School. Would you come forward, Jalen?
Yay!
Jalen is an 8th grader who is an inspiring writer. She has 2 selections that will be published in this year's Voices in the Middle book, which is an anthology of writing and artwork by middle schoolers from Springfield and sister city Isesaki, Japan. These creative works reflect the confusion, loyalty, fears, and turmoil of life from the perspective of young teens. We know that Jalen's family and school community are very proud of her. And if you're here to support Jalen this evening, would you please stand? We thank you for being here. And now we ask those who are able to please join us by standing as Jalen leads the Pledge of Allegiance. Whenever you're ready, Jalen.
Wherever you want to be, Coach.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Take a picture.
Yeah, her mom's here. I took their picture.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's her friend.
We'll now move forward with honoring excellence for the evening. We're going to start by one of our distinguished principals. It is a privilege this evening to introduce Mrs. Cindy Webster. Mrs. Webster, would you come forward, please? Mrs. Webster is the principal at Weaver Elementary School. You may recall in January that she was among 3 of our principals who had been selected for recognition by the Springfield region of the Missouri Association of Elementary School Principals. Earlier this month, Mrs. Webster was chosen from a group of 11 distinguished principal honorees from throughout the state of Missouri as the Missouri National Distinguished Principal. As a result, she will represent Missouri and MAESP at the national event, which will be held in Washington, D.C. in October. Congratulations, Mrs. Webster, and thank you for being an amazing representative of SPS and our state.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. I just wanted to say thank you all for the support and the leadership that you guys have allowed here in Springfield, and I'm very glad to be a part of it. And I especially want to thank Dr. Anderson, who has been a big part in helping me grow as a leader, and also Nicole Holt and Dr. Jungman, who have provided great leadership for our district and helped me to grow as a leader here.
Yay. She's making another lap. Making another lap. You're a frequent flyer here now. That's right.
And we enjoy always the opportunity for our Building Up recognition. Each month, principals and department leaders recognize individuals who personify the Building Up philosophy. From these outstanding employees, we choose one to highlight at the Board of Education meeting. Tonight's video shares the story of Mr. Jim Zinneker and how he uses music to build relationships and make a positive impact on students at Wilson's Creek Intermediate School.
Going to show on both?
Yes.
Jim Zinneker, and I'm a band teacher at Wilson's Creek. Well, I've been here at Wilson's Creek since it was opened up. This is my 16th year, my 34th year in total. I think the first thing is that you fall in love with your subject matter. When you're a musician, music's everything.
Yeah, do you want to start that over? Let's start again.
Start it over. 1 second.
We'll get it right. when we're hearing music, we got to hear the music, right?
Next to it or something.
Not there yet. Ooh.
My name is Jim Zinneker, and I'm the band teacher at Wilson's Creek. Well, I've been here at Wilson's Creek since it was opened up. This is my 16th year, my 34th year in total teaching. I think the first thing is that you fall in love with your subject matter. And when you're a musician, music is everything.
Mr. Zinneker is a consummate professional. Over the last 16 years, he's only gotten better. He reminds with our mission statement, which is to be engaging, relevant, and personal. And over the 16 years, rather than become stagnant, he is still more passionate than day when he began.
Mr. Zinneker and I have taught together for probably 15 years, and so I've known him as a colleague for those years. My two boys went through his band program, both for 6th grade and middle school, and so I've known him as a parent as well for my two boys that played the trumpet.
The reason I nominated him was because of one of the lessons that he did.
The lesson that I taught was a gratitude lesson, and it was right after the band students had received their instrument. Most of the students in our school district, their parents provide their musical instrument. So the week after we received our musical instruments, I showed them the letter that I written to my parents over 40 years ago, thanking them for providing my musical instrument. And then we set out writing their parents the same type of letter.
I really liked that lesson, and I know my parents really appreciated it, and it made me feel really good because I do really appreciate them getting my instrument for me.
Students that perhaps don't always excel in the other classrooms, but who are shining in his class, and it made me realize just the impact that not only this lesson made, but that Mr. Zinneker is making on students.
I got to see it through the eyes of my boys and how inspirational he is. He came across for both of them as an adult that cared.
I would tell him thank you because he's helped a lot.
23 years here in Missouri and 11 in Texas. Everybody keeps asking me when it's going to be the last one, but I'm still not sure. It's all up in the air.
So, Mr. Zinneker, would you please come forward so we may present you with a Building Up lanyard pin, and thank you for your talents and support of students and staff at Wilson's Creek, and we would love for you to share a few words if you're available.
Oh, gosh. All right, well, can I pull this back?
Yeah, take it down.
Please.
We want to hear you better.
All right, so I didn't prepare anything, but I'm very honored to receive this award. I've been at this for a very long time, and sometimes we think that we're getting something because you're an old timer, and they're waiting for you to leave. But in reflection, I'm very honored, and everything that I've achieved, or maybe thought I've achieved, has been on the backs with the support of Dr. Christie and a tremendous staff at Wilson's Creek that I've been with since the very first day of Wilson's Creek, and I couldn't have possibly been in a better place. So I'm very honored. Thank you for this moment.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we had one additional honoring excellence this evening who is unable to be with us. We just learned, but we will reschedule that for next month. It will be worth the wait, we assure you. So that concludes honoring excellence this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Our next agenda item is to approve the agenda. The recommended action is that the board approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Charles?
Second.
Jerry with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we are ready to vote.
Oh, I'm fogging up already.
Motion passes. Whew. Our first agenda item is public comments to address agenda items, and we have one of those tonight. Mr. Roy Holland. I got it right the second time. Got it. Good evening, Roy.
Good evening. President Leonard and board members, good evening. My name's Roy Holland, and I want to thank you all tonight for your dedicated service to Springfield education, and especially those for whom this may be the last meeting. Thank you very much. With the turnover, we have new members with new ideas and a steep learning curve. We all know that. What might their interest be? I think a common one that I have heard is the likelihood that there will be increased dialogue with the public during meetings such as this. And I endorse this based on my past legislative background. I think this change will help to reduce public distrust, disinformation, improve board decision-making, as well as transparency. The recent process of hiring a superintendent seemed to have no public information on candidates or finalists, as is customary in the community for leadership positions. And then one was hired 3 weeks before the next board election. The existence of Springfield is not going to change from being the center of a metro area. And the adjacent schools will still have higher incomes, newer buildings, and higher test scores. That's competitive. District stability may become a new factor as leadership changes occur on this board or with the superintendent. We all know how curriculum and computers will continue to be controversial. I expect the approval of the legislative bill relating to sub-districts yet this year, but we'll make it between sometime in the next 2 months or 12 months. And I believe it will represent positive change for the residents, for the students, and also for the school board because you'll manage in a different way. I'd like to inform you there is another bill in the legislature which you may have or may not have heard about, and it's sponsored and endorsed by the Jefferson City School District, and it would allow any school district board itself the authority to change to sub-districts if they so chose. At any rate, this is all about justice and democracy for all, and I believe it will increase the equality of opportunity, resources, and trust. Finally, I believe as you go from this time forward, it'll take 2-3 years to see how these things stabilize in Springfield going forward, and see if the enrollment indicates that as well. Might the current trends cause private schools to increase? Charters, I know, are always on the agenda, and I don't support those at all. Also, I think with time, we'll see the open classrooms disappear from our education program here as they did elsewhere in the 1970s and 1980s. The hub concept for 4-year-olds, I believe, will also fade and become more located in neighborhood schools, which it's already started. And then finally, there's always the issue of increasing poverty and how do we deal with that. That will continue indefinitely. At any rate, however it evolves, education will still be the foundation for our families, for our communities, as it is for all of us here tonight. I've been blessed, as you all have, so let's get together and make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Our next agenda item are our consent agenda items. The recommended action is that the board approve consent agenda items 3.01 through 5.01. Charles with the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Jerry with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Motion passes. Next agenda item is our treasurer's report, and that brings Carol Emery up to the podium. Good evening, Carol.
Good evening. So I do have the next few agenda items, and so I brought everything with
Make
me.
yourself at home.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, so the first thing is the treasurer's report. We've posted for you our standard reports, and I'll highlight for you that our budget amendment for your consideration this evening includes an adjustment to local revenue downward of $1,154,803. We also do have expenditure changes totaling $12,089,661. The bulk of that is relative to debt service and adjusting to the refinancing of the bond issue that saved us money in overall interest payments. So with that, the ending fund balance that we would anticipate at June 30 would be adjusted to 17.35% for the operating fund. And I am happy to answer any other questions that you might have relative to the information.
Right. Any questions for Carol at this time? Okay, I'll go ahead and read the recommended action is that the board approves the treasurer's report as presented. So moved. Jill with the motion.
Second.
Bruce with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Motion passes. Our next agenda item is information reports, which there are no information reports. That leads us to board policy, and there are no board policies for review at this time. That brings us to new business, property, automobile, and liability insurance renewal. And Carol.
So this is the standard month that we bring this to you. We do have a renewal. Our coverages expire April 1st, 2021. And the information that's presented was prepared in collaboration with Aulis, Akers, and Arney. They serve as our broker for property and liability insurance. The proposal is a total premium increase of $1,410,205. That is a 20.1% increase, and the dollars associated with that is $241,622 over the prior year. The coverage has a variety of factors included in it. Our current carrier, Chubb, is recommended to continue with this renewal. The information was marketed with a number of providers, insurance providers. There were 11 different direct contacts that our brokerage company made, and the details of that are presented. We are recommending with this a change in our deductible range to $50,000 to $250,000, dependent on the site. We previously had $50,000 for all sites, and also this is also including an increase in coverage limits from $1 million to $3 million for physical and sexual abuse coverage with no liability retentions overall change. So a thorough review was conducted. Our Director of Risk Management, Nancy Reagans, worked directly with our brokerage firm. If you have any questions, I might need to phone a friend.
Okay. Yeah, right. Any questions on this agenda item at this time? Gary?
So with the change in deductible, even with that, was the additional things what jumped up to 20%?
Well,
increase?
we had increased values and certainly utilization, but there have been a number of wind and hail exposures in the Midwest, and that's caused an overall increase in insurance rates, not related to our specific properties.
I feel that pain.
Yes. So all that was done, and those changes occurred to help reduce down the overall increase in costs. All of this, of course, would be factored into our budget presentation that will be provided to you effective for next year that we'll seek approval on in June.
I appreciate the team reviewing this,
Yes.
trying to be good stewards for our taxpayer dollars. I'll read the recommended action is that the board approve the property, automobile, and liability insurance renewal with the current carriers as presented. Would somebody like to make that motion? So moved. Jill, is there a second? Bruce with the second? Any discussion? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Motion passes. Our next agenda item is student device replacement and lease. Carol.
Yes. So this work was performed by our Director of Technology, Bruce Douglas, and also our Director of Business Services, Kara Stasel. So they worked to bring forward for us this technology lease, and it impacts purchasing Chromebooks that will be for our 1st, 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade students. This is our routine process where we are ensuring that we're keeping our devices updated and providing the best tools for our kids. There were 7 separate proposals that were received March 15th, and ultimately we are recommending for the lease Bank of America Public Capital Corporation. They were the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and their interest rate is 0.668%, which is quite phenomenal, but not any surprise relative to the world in which we are operating. So the 3 estimated annual payments based on a principal amount of $2,267,375 will be approximately $762,283. Again, all of that will be incorporated into the budget recommendation that we bring to you. And with regard to the Chromebooks, this is purchasing 8,500 HP Chromebook devices and also cases to support that. I will read the motion for you, and that way you can move forward then if you do have questions. That the board approve the attached resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of an equipment lease purchase agreement with Bank of America Public Capital Corp. As lessor for the acquisition, purchase, financing, and leasing of certain technology equipment, authorizing the execution and delivery of other documents required in connection therewith, and authorizing all other actions related to the equipment lease purchase financing contemplated by this resolution.
Somebody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, Jerry, and then Charles with the second. Any discussion?
And so it goes without saying that this was absolutely thoroughly reviewed by an attorney who provided us with that motion.
Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Motion passes. Next agenda item is unfinished business, the 21-22 budget development.
Yes. So we gave you a bit of a preview because we had some special information we wanted to share with you back in January, I believe. And so this evening we will jump into our routine presentations to help you recenter your minds on the structure of our funds and the expenditures that are supported through those funds. So we'll talk about the strategic plan alignment, the statutory and policy compliance, our process that we're utilizing to ensure we obtain feedback, and then I'll share at the very end our schedule for presentation. I know you know this, you've lived it with us, but everything that we do, we are aligning to our strategic plan. And you know that we have our 5 focus areas, and we present on those to you frequently. But important to note that everything that has been submitted through this budget development process also is in alignment with our strategic plan. Our goal each year is to make sure that we are providing a budget recommendation that aligns to board policy, which aligns us to Missouri statute. And so these are the components that are necessary to be included within the budget document. That is a budget message, the estimated revenues in a certain format, and also proposed expenditures presented a few different ways. We also include within the budget document for your review any amortization information relative to debt, and that can include the bond issue debt. It also includes any leases, such as the one that you just approved for technology. We also include a general budget summary, and it's become our practice many years ago that we provide you that general budget summary each month so that you have the ability to stay in tune with the changes impacting our fund balances. This shows you that budget calendar process, and as you can see, we are in the middle of that with the March through June information sharing and feedback that we'll ask of you. And we also have gone through the process of prioritization with our executive leaders. And this slide is a repeat from what I provided to you months ago. But we basically go through that process of identifying all of our priorities. We have our executive leadership team members work with their leaders so that we can ensure that we are receiving information relative to where the students are in the buildings and where our operational leaders find needs within the system. So they work through that communication. We then bring it all forward and we review it as an executive leadership team and prioritize it. But before we prioritize it, we ensure that all of our work is aligned to our prioritization needs. And so we had worked through that and developed that as well. Then we seek feedback from you. So this is that prioritization of needs from which we are operating, and this also continues to keep us tightly aligned to our strategic plan. So number one, maintaining our current staffing levels relative to classroom ratios to provide consistent instruction for our students. Taking care of our people in terms of salary and benefits for our existing staff members. Strategies and staffing for support of our under-resourced and underrepresented students, making sure that we are in tune with the needs and the changing dynamics affecting them. And number four is the instructional and or support staff who impact the classroom. Lastly, support and or strategic expansion of our current initiatives. So continuing to support that which has already been vetted and proved to be beneficial for our kids. This shows you a pie of our expenditure budget, and what it's highlighting for you are the funds that exist within our system. And so we will be taking a deep dive into that with each of these budget presentations. You note that the general fund is the largest fund, just over nearly $120 million. Actually, the general fund is not the largest fund. The teacher fund is the largest fund, of course, at $192 million, followed by the general fund. Those two combined are what we refer to as general operating. So that is our largest portion of the budget. Then we have our bond component, which is nearly $97 million in the current year for a budgeted perspective. Debt service, $42.9 million. We have a health benefit trust fund, and that supports our self-insurance fund, and then GO-CAPS and our capital fund. So those are also represented in the next two slides. This is a snapshot for you that likely is very familiar. This is this first shot, the first page, rather, of our ASBR report, which is the annual Secretary of the Board report. What it really is our annual financial report to the state of Missouri. And the way they like to receive the data, and I'm not sure if it's up to 50 pages now of information that gets submitted to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, but it is divided into these four funds that are represented here. And that's important to note because as you look at all of our funds, you will learn more about the differences between fiduciary versus our regular operating. And so I will show you, it shows you the beginning fund balance, the revenue, the expenditures, and the ending fund balance as reported last year, where we landed at an 18.27% fund balance percentage. So this is that general budget summary image that we provide to you each month within the treasurer's reports. And what's highlighted in blue would be those operating funds, the general and teacher fund. And we focus much of our attention on that because of the changes that can come forward with that. And much of our budget energy is, budget development energy is spent in that regard. The debt service fund is always representative of our debt that we have outstanding and how we're retiring that debt each year. The capital projects fund is our regular capital separate from our bond funds. And we do have a separate capital projects fund indicated, Fund 48. That represents the commitment of the district to invest in some of those bond projects that we currently have underway, as was discussed with our community task force members. And then that then represents all governmental funds. Beyond the governmental funds that are reported to the state of Missouri, we have the Health Benefit Trust Fund, which again covers our self-insurance program for health benefits for our employees, and then also the Greater Ozarks Center for Advanced Professional Students, the studies. And that is a fiduciary fund. So both of those are fiduciary funds, and then our total funds then are representative of all of those combined. So each month we're providing you all of the information that you need to understand the activity taking place within the district. The general fund and teacher fund take care of our people mostly, as indicated on that pie, and not only salary and benefits, but this is where we also are required to pay for all the supplies that we use, whether it's utilities, whether it's fuel for buses, the food in the cafeterias, all of those things that go into the classroom, those would also be included. So again, that impacts the general fund and the teacher fund, often referred to as our operating funds. The next section that we'll explore in a future meeting will be the debt service fund, and again, that's for all that debt retirement for regular bond issues that our patrons have approved. So it includes the principal and the interest and also the fees. The capital projects fund would be representative of construction projects or certain equipment that costs a threshold of $3,000 or more. We have facility acquisition in here as well. If we were to purchase a land that's not associated with the bond, those types of things would be coded to the capital projects fund. And all that we do the entire year long, and that which we report through our budget and through our financial reports each month, align to the requirements of the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to generate a very small budget document, but it's all in sync with the requirements placed upon us. So the bond funds I mentioned before are part of the capital projects fund from a reporting structure to the state of Missouri. Our health benefits trust fund again covers our medical and dental for our employees. That includes prescriptions, and also our wellness programming is expended through that fund. The Greater Ozark Center for Advanced Professional Studies, that again is a separate fund. We are the fiscal agent for that, but all the cooperating districts pay tuition, and we pay tuition for the students of SPS that are attending. We're just managing that, and we do receive a percentage of the cost so that we are being reimbursed for any associated administrative work that we're doing. Primary component includes our collaborative contract with the Chamber of Commerce for their program management of that work. So it's not directly coded to or directly expended by any of our staff members. So this is the last slide, and again, it reminds you of our process. So it was January 19th when we talked not only about the timeline and process, but we talked about current impacts, meaning we were taking a look at our staffing ratios, and we also talked a little bit about the ESSER funds. So we know that we have an excess, we had over $6 million in the ESSER 1 program, or the CARES funds, that we had available to us at the end of last year and capitalized on this year. Then in the current year, we had received notification of in excess of $27 million for ESSER funds to support our student needs. And then we also have an understanding of the next round, which would be round 3 of stimulus support, and that will be nearly twice the amount of the ESSER 2 funds. So we are working currently on a plan to deliver to you for consideration how we might utilize that. We're working with our before and after care partners and other areas to see what kind of supports we could bring forward for kids. Moving forward, we'll talk April 13th about those smaller funds, the GoCaps, the Health Benefit Trust, and Debt Service. That will be followed by Capital Projects, April 27th, General and Teacher Fund, May 18th, and the June 8th presentation will be the comprehensive presentation on the budget. It will also include the best information we can provide you relative to revenues. and that is primarily based on information we've received from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And then lastly, we will present for your consideration the budget at the June 22nd meeting. And as you know, our fiscal year ends June 30, and budgets must be approved by that date for the next fiscal year. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Yeah, a couple of questions. The first, it relates to slide 7, but you don't need to go back to it, I don't think. One of the principles is that we want to maintain current staffing levels for instruction. I presume that's also for support staff and administrative staff. It should not grow at a rate any greater than instructional staff.
Right, and I would say to you that we are constantly looking at our support staff numbers in terms of are we hitting the right threshold, and quite frankly, in many areas where there might be a variety of standards, we aren't necessarily at those levels. So
I'm primarily interested in sort of the administrative infrastructure on top, sort of that. But I mean, I just wanted to make sure that that's part of maintaining our commitment.
I would say to you that is always at the forefront and always being worked through, yes.
Okay. Question about, and then I've talked a little bit about the CARES Fund. Yes. Is it identified in the budget as separate or just rolled into the general revenue? And do you anticipate DESE ever segmenting the CARES Fund to a different fund or something so that it's not just rolled into the general fund?
A couple of years ago, we had to go through an extensive overhaul that was mandated. It came from a federal point, but then was pushed to state government, and so we were required to do an overhaul and add digits. So we went from a 16-digit general ledger code to multiple additional digits. And what that did is it identified the source. It adds a revenue source code to associate to every single expenditure that we have. And at this point in time, that is the method that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has indicated will continue to be utilized. So we are always able to slice and dice the data, but from a fund perspective, there's been no expectation to separate that out. But it will be something that will need to be a consideration if looking at historical data and making decisions based on that.
So did you just say that DESE could identify all the money that was distributed in schools?
Absolutely.
Okay, through that fund?
Through the method that we must report our funding, they would be able to identify that, yes, as would we.
One last question.
Yeah, Charles.
Carol, particularly with all the exciting news about sort of expansion of launch, where does the launch fit into this? And will we be able to sort of have that sort of budget discussion regarding launch as a kind of not a separate, but a separable item for us to consider?
So each month we provide the general budget summary, and as noted within those blue boxes, we have a variety of funds. Fund 10 is our normal general operating fund. Fund 15 is launch. It is not allowed to be coded to a teacher fund. Fund 50 is our nutrition services, and Fund 60 is student activities. Likewise, under teacher funds, this column represents general teacher, and then also that attributed to launch. So we are able to, in that way, perform a variety of financial reporting and analytics on the data.
I guess what I'm asking is, will that be kind of broken out, so we can look at it sort of as a separable entity when we're having these discussions?
We can
either here or in our smaller group.
Right. We can absolutely. That can be part of our review and feedback process.
Any other questions? Okay, all right. Nothing to vote on tonight, so thank you, Carol, for that contextual overview. And that leads us to our next agenda item, bond project updates and actions. The first agenda item is change orders and agreements. That brings Travis Shaw to the podium. Good evening, Travis.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hey, Jill. First meeting with my new bifocal, so if I look like I'm still working on this. So.
Looking good. Do you want me to hold your paper? So here?
No, it's about where you hold of it and which top or bottom you look through.
Don't I know it?
Feel your pain. Feel your pain. Yeah. So in front of you is a standard change order and agreement project list, and there are 21 different items this month. You'll see a lot of the items on here represent and reflect our work going on at the storm shelters with the different commissioning services and consulting services. Delight of this particular total is that it is actually a deduct and a credit toward our bond budgets of a total of $119,635.13. A large majority of that is a $270,464.14 deduct to the Sunshine construction, large in part to we allowed in both Delaware and Sunshine allowances for the playground surface. We were able to actually fund that part of the playground along with playground equipment through our FF&E budget, which allowed us then to not use the allowance within the construction, therefore reducing that cost. And so you'll see that represented there at the $239,979. So all of these items, like I said, grand total would be a requested deduct of $119,635.13. If there are any of these items that I need to clarify, please let me know, but this would be our recommendation to approve this evening.
Any questions for Travis before I read the recommended action? The recommended action is that the board approves the change orders and agreements as presented. So moved. Jill with the motion.
Second.
Jerry with the second. Any discussion? Other than thank you, Travis, for the review. Thank you. We are ready to vote. Motion passes. Our next agenda item is York Elementary Early Bid Package.
So as a reminder, the York Elementary construction project is, we're using the construction manager at risk delivery method. Utilizing this allows us to do some early bid packages if it will benefit the project. In this case, and in our other projects, we like to early bid the demo and we like to early bid the precast construction. And so the purpose for that is, particularly with the precast construction, it allows us to go ahead and get production of the precast walls and the roof done ahead of time and on their schedule to maintain our project schedule. There's right now we're being told anywhere from 6 to 7 month lead time on precast panels, and so getting this approved now gets it in their schedule, and then production can start. Obviously, demolition is the first thing that takes place. That will happen as soon as we can get our teams in at the end of school, remove all the items that we need to, and then demolition will start. Right now, it's scheduled to start June 7th. So getting these approved ahead of time helps all of the contractors in our schedule. You'll see a guaranteed maximum price of $1,412,140. I've noted the two contractors that submitted the lowest responsible bid, Gherkin for demo and pre-stressed casting for the as a pre-stressed subcontractor. Part of the guaranteed maximum price are items not only to the demo, which was $474,838, and the precast, which was $731,000. There are things like general requirements for insurance and performance and payment bonds. There's a temporary road that we put in just for precast to come in because of the weight of all of the panels. Temporary fencing. There's also the general conditions that we pay directly to the contractor, as well as their construction fee that goes on the total cost. So all of those things make up what is considered the guaranteed maximum price, which is in front of you. The approval would be to approve the contract with R.E. Smith, who is our contractor for the amount listed.
Any questions for Travis before I read the recommended action?
I just really have a comment. So the fact that we are sitting here tonight talking about this with York is, I think, nothing short of a miracle. Because if you'll give us a little reminder, and I will say, having served on the Facilities Task Force Committee, or whatever you call it, a group that York wasn't even on our phase one. But because of the extremely efficient management of our bond money, here we are, looking at putting York on this phase of that bond money. So can you remind us a little bit about
You did a great job, Denise.
Seriously.
Yeah,
Well,
so
it's something to be
right.
celebrated, and it's something to remind, and those folks that maybe were not a part of all of this will not be aware of that.
Right, yeah, this along with, as we we all remember the second phase at Hillcrest, we're allowed to move forward on the next project list that were prioritized by the community task force, and because of the bids coming in and the efficiency of pricing, and you've seen the estimates that we've been receiving on all of these, and you've seen the contract bids, and the fact that the interest that's earned on this, and the commitment from the district toward these projects. And so all of those things have allowed these additional dollars to be able to utilize that were not slated to be used until 2023 in a future bond issue. And so it's great to be able to, and I like to toot the horn of our communications team, not only progress as promised, but more than promised. And that's really what we're being able to do. So it's a great use of the taxpayer dollars that they have said we want you to use and use well. So.
And yes, well, and I would just say thank you for bringing this to us in a timely manner so that this can be teed up and get going for our students. I know it's not part of the motion, but we want to make sure Laura Hopper gets an old brick when they do the demo, please. But
we'll have a big pile.
Put a pile for those principals and teachers who are so excited about this. But so the recommended action is that the board approve the construction contract as presented.
So moved.
Charles with the motion. Denise with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Motion passes. Our next agenda item is public comments to address non-agenda items. I'll read the public comment statement. The Board of Education will allow comments on topics not related to the printed agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes for each speaker and will be timed by the board secretary. It is inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in open meeting. If you have concerns about individuals, these concerns should be addressed through the appropriate administrative supervisors, either in the schools or in the district office. The board uses this time in our meetings to listen to comments and or concerns from the public, but will not comment or engage with the public during this meeting. If you have materials that you would like to share, please provide them to the board secretary prior to speaking, and she will distribute them to board members. Our first person this evening is Arthur Hodge.
I'm always first.
You drew the lucky number.
If you need to ask me later, I can elaborate. I'm just going to do short form. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good evening.
Hello, sir. Good to see you.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here. One of the first things I'm concerned about is diversity. Resource officers change the rules and the requirements, or we'll never have any blacks as resource officers. Also, Pleasant View needs all new furniture. This is back in the 1920s. Also, primary and secondary education should be a great time in a student's life. We should have happy times, which leaves a wonderful and positive effect, academic and social events that last for a lifetime like mine. I still remember my school, and one of my teachers just died the other day. Create school pride and school spirit. It is their time to shine, not to be used as a social experiment by grown-ups. We are the worst, grown-ups. The food service program needs to improve. Serve better food, please, and not all prepackaged foods. Variety on the menu. Some of the food service staff are interested in a new contract, 21 and 22 year. That includes expectations for the nutrition service employees and what you expect them to do. They need to cook, not prepackaged stuff. Come on, people. You're not eating all prepackaged stuff. Sports teams are getting lighter and lighter. You know what I mean when I say that. Grades should not have a bearing on students playing sports. Many are left out, many drop out. The only thing that's keeping them afloat was playing sports. Many students will never achieve academic excellence. We know that, nor will they be average. It's just the world, people. Everybody's not going to be a super duper in academics. The cooks, the nurse, and I can really talk about this, but some other time though. The cooks, the nurse, and the custodians are and do play a great role in the success of our schools. They are very, very important. They keep the wheels in motion. There's a need for open communication at all levels. Keep them informed, not this last-minute information, expect them to jump through hoops. Make them part of the circle. A well-informed worker becomes a better worker. There's definitely a need for better communication in the sports arena, and I can talk about that all day. Get the information out in a timely manner. Last but not least, my hat off to the bus drivers. Appreciate these people. Tell them you appreciate them. They keep the school functioning. You don't keep the school functioning. They do. And as a soldier, I always enjoyed my subordinates because they kept everything going. And I appreciate if you look into these, and particularly the resource officers. When I was a resource officer, we gave classes and stuff. I don't know what they're doing now. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Thank you, Arthur. Our next public speaker is Teresa Drusa. Did I say that right? Yes. Yeah, okay. Good evening, Teresa.
Good evening. If you've got minor children within the sound of my voice, you need to have them leave the room because I'm going to read a very disturbing paragraph. My grandson had to read it, and so I think the public needs to know what we're reading in public schools. After a few minutes, the boy pushed the girl's head down and she started to kiss his penis. She was still crying. Finally, she stopped crying because he put his penis in her mouth. And I don't think you can cry in that position. I had to stop watching at that point because I started to feel sick, but it kept going on, and they kept doing other things, and she kept saying no, even when I covered my ears. So we're also teaching our young male students that if a girl says no, you just keep going. I believe this violates federal law on obscenity and sexual grooming, and legitimizing the sexualization of students by incorporating graphic description of sex acts in school assignments can lead to heightened sexual activity and even abuse by predators. Assigning pornographic literature under the guise of English language arts is meant to deceive parents into looking the other way while they sexually molest our kids' minds. Be aware that assigning students to read graphic sex acts as literature constitutes aspects of sexual grooming. The Supreme Court has a three-pronged test that I don't have time to read, that the code makes it illegal for any person to knowingly produce, distribute, receive, or possess with intent to transfer or distribute visual representations that appear to depict minors engaged in sexually explicit conduct and are deemed obscene. The penalty is a fine and at least 5 years up to 20 years. Convicted offenders of federal obscenity laws involving minors may be required to register as sex offenders. The law also prohibits the use of misleading names to deceive a minor into viewing harmful or obscene material. The perks of being a wallflower. I thought it was a wimpy kid book. And then I read, and that's just one of many paragraphs in this book. You need to stop it. You need to publish for the public what books you're buying and who you're buying them from. Here's another one. It's got a matrix for a loser. And one of the things is, you have a Band-Aid on your ball sack. Is this art to you people? Does this have literary value? Does this have educational value? I don't think so. And it needs to stop.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Calvin Morrow. Is there a Calvin Morrow? Okay. Okay, thank you. Our next public speaker is Mary Byrne. Good evening, Mary.
Good evening. I'd like to take the opportunity to memorialize the content of a handout that I've given to Kathy to distribute to you. It includes my statement of December 8th to this board, putting into public record that the slides presented to the board that evening from the 2019-2020 strategic plan included documentation that critical race theory was a substantial component of the content being a part of the professional development of teachers. Also, our slides that the above-mentioned strategic plan is described says that members of the black community are described as the oppressed. Slides from the SPS online professional development content show that the purpose of the content was to provide elementary teachers with material to bring Black Lives Matter into the classroom. There is an oppression matrix distributed to teachers for an activity to which the teachers were compelled to identify their placement as the oppressor on the matrix. There's an excerpt from Marx's letter to a friend describing the task before us at this present time is the ruthless criticism of the existing order. There's an excerpt from Marx's 1884 essay explaining that the way to incite a revolution is a particular social sphere must be recognized as the notorious crime of the whole society, so that the liberation from that sphere appears as a general self-liberation, and the targeted sphere becomes the obvious oppression. There's an excerpt from a 1950s American communist leader named Manning Johnson, who since then left the Communist Party, but described white leftists as white communist missionaries, saying everything was interracial, and interracial artificially created, cleverly disguised as camouflaged of the red plot to use the Negro. There's an excerpt from Bill Ayer's Prairie Fire, a 1960s manual of the Weather Underground, documenting the duty of a revolutionary is to make the revolution, and the revolution was to target white supremacy. There's a February 25 article published by the Socialist Alternative entitled Black Lives Matter and Marxism, with a special section dedicated to identity politics and privilege theory. There's an excerpt from a Zoom interview with Patrisse Cullors, co-founder of Black Lives Matter, saying, "We are trained Marxists." There's an excerpt from a 1942 U.S. Supreme Court ruling in West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett that described local authorities' forced speech as a violation of citizens' First Amendment rights. There's an excerpt from the 2018 U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Janus versus American Federal of State, County, and Municipal Employees that stated, compelling individuals to mouth support for views they find objectionable violates the cardinal constitutional command, and in most contexts, as any such effort would be universally condemned. There's a copy of the Article 9, Section 1A of the Missouri Constitution stating that the purpose of the legislature to fund public education is to protect the rights and liberties of the people, not to violate them. In closing, I would like to submit a new definition of oppressed and oppressor. The oppressed are the members of the public and those in public school system who honor the public's statutorily protected right to transparency. The oppressors are those who use their positions of authority to embarrass, silence, and impede the free exercise of the rights of the oppressed.
Thank you, Mary. Our next public speaker is Pat Scott. Good evening, Pat.
Thank you for letting me speak again. As you know, I've been here several times. Thank you for your service. The three of you that are going to remain on the board, or ever how many. We have to turn this system here in Springfield, Missouri upside down. The only thing worse than what that lady read in the curriculum in that book that you all heard is the fact that nobody in this administration, I was at the meeting last month, when she spoke to that, somebody in our education department should have called her and responded. You're not going to talk, you're not going to ask me a question, you're not going to indicate that you're going to answer me in any way. I know that. It kind of brings me to the next point. I know you have the beautiful buildings now that you think is going to be the answer for everything, but it's not. We still have the lowest test scores in the state. We have the open classrooms that do nothing to teach children. You know that. It's not been proven. And we're down 1,500 students in this district. How much are we down on our administrative side? You remaining board members that will be serving for the next few years. It needs to be cut. If there's not somebody in administration that could call that lady, if they didn't already know what that book was that she read, I can't even find the words to describe it. There should be somebody to do that. I don't believe it's the board's responsibility to completely set the curriculum like this board has. I know you all know what CRT is. Do you really know what it is? Go to Mary Byrne and listen to her presentation on the 30th this month at Gloria Deo. And look at one of the schools that are growing, the private schools. There's going to be so many things that this board's going to have to look at. Choice schools, charter schools, and we're losing students and you're not going to get them back. When people move to Springfield, they don't say, I want my kids in Springfield. They say, I want to get my kids in an outlying district. You surely know that. You even have people that you hire from out of town to put their kids in those schools. I don't believe this board has completely the right to set somebody in administration that I've seen them do presentations here where they stand up, some new part of curriculum they're doing, and 20 people stand up that helped on the project. We don't need that to teach somebody how to do multiplication or division and take a sheet of paper. We need to get back to some basics in this district, and I think the public and the people in this district are ready for that. I think it was atrocious that we have a new superintendent coming in, that we know nothing about the details, except what we read in the paper. It's not good that we had to take someone with such a controversial background, and not one person from this board said anything about why that person was selected. Hopefully, it'll be just fine. Why we have to go out with the United States to find a replacement or a superintendent, I don't know. The assistant, I'm sorry, I don't remember the names. But I know our new board members are going to have their work cut out for them, and they should. Our kids' future is at stake. And I don't think you really know, I shouldn't say this, maybe you do, what CRT is.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Daniel Pierce. Good evening, Daniel.
Good evening. First off, I'm already upset. Before I got here, got more upset that I thought I had a budget item that should have been addressed and got pushed to this side to my 3-minute time limit. First off, the budget thing I thought should have been addressed kind of was addressed by one of the board members, but I think we need more questions. Since the video that was sent out on Facebook last night by our communication department of SPS, saying our mission now is our launch program, which as a parent of 2 kids in SPS, frustrates me. And I don't know if it's just the launch part of it, or is it Springfield's overall agenda, which as a parent, I feel that way. Their mission is to go more virtual, because, buildings cost money, but we spend a ton of money already on buildings, which I feel is ineffective for our students. In regards to our buildings, since Proposition S, I have not heard anything from the district on their plans to keep what's been put in place to keep these new buildings for becoming what they're being replaced by, or what they're replacing. And what's in place by the district to keep buildings to being so dilapidated that we have to tear them down and rebuild them, which costs more money to rebuild a school than it does to remodel. And any business contractor could probably tell you that. Other issues that I have is the lack of communication from SPS, giving parents 10 days to have to readjust their whole lives because we go back to 5 days. My employer and multiple retail companies I've worked for in the past 20 years all require me to give, or their associates, 3 to 4 weeks notice. Lucky I have a great boss who worked with me and some of SPS's students that were scheduled to work because they weren't in class on Wednesdays. Also, with the lack of communication, is being able to have more input as a parent on our superintendent that we hired. Being what we saw on the news and the lack of just saying a thing has been addressed is like my boss telling me it is what it is, which is to me is unacceptable. I really hope that this lady's better than what she comes out on paper or what I've seen on paper or in the media. But I think parents should have had more input, staff should have had more input other than a survey and a questionnaire at the very beginning of the process. We should have been brought in later in the process and talk to, or be able to have input like jury's president and they hired to him.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Our next agenda item is report from administration.
Yeah, I'll give you the update on instructional model, COVID case, vaccination, and next steps. So second semester is progressing well. We shifted, as you know, instructional models yesterday as we moved to fourth quarter, moving to a 5-day in-person learning for all of our pre-K-12 kids who selected that delivery model, which is more than 80% now. So 80% of our kids back in classrooms 5 days a week. Tomorrow we're excited. It's our first Wednesday in actually a year, right? If you think about when we shut down and went to SPS at home in the spring last year. It's the first time our classrooms will be full on a Wednesday. So we're excited about having our students there with us. We hope we can finish in this model, and the data from third quarter has been very encouraging. If you look at case counts, second quarter we all know was our hot spot with 705 cases between students and staff during second quarter. Third quarter down to 400 and only 51 in the last 4 weeks. Right? So we're really seeing that dive in case count, which gives us the encouragement to proceed and the health department's support to do so. Vaccination at this point is an important part of kind of the next phase, as we know, in this nation and community. At this point, approximately 2,400 of our employees had expressed interest in the vaccine. 400, a little over 400 were in the first wave of high-risk employees. So they got access earlier. Beginning last week, another 1,900 began access, and we worked hand in hand with Jordan Valley to have clinics last week and provide access for our staff to sign up. We have additional clinics next week. Staff can also get access through their healthcare provider and many other community access points. So we're encouraging them to get there, and we know they're taking advantage of that rapidly right now. So next steps. Important to note that we're going to maintain current mitigation strategies. So we're not really shifting anything other than bringing back students 5 days a week at this point. As we continue to work through this phase of vaccination, that'll take a few weeks to get multiple shots in our team's arms, right? For more full protection. Any future modifications will be obviously made in consultation with Springfield Greene County Health Department, and they'll be impacted by community health data, hospitalization rate, and vaccination rates. And you've probably seen that the health department has presented that to our city council as part of the review of next steps. And I do believe city council supported moving forward with some of that action last night. But the current order stays intact through the early April, and then we'll determine if we can move to a next phase as a city. But our mitigation strategies are going to stay in place at this time at the current levels. Then we'll review kind of early April to see if there's any shifts. Other things to know, over the last few weeks, you probably saw some information from the CDC study that was actually completed in Missouri. And you know, we were participants in that study. It's helped inform practice here as well as inform practice across the country that our mitigation strategies have worked. And I think that process is really helping reopening strategies, as I talked at the federal level with some of my colleagues. So you've seen CDC also adjust some of their parameters of number of feet between students, and we just received an update from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and Health Services from the state on that today. So that aligns to all of the work that we've already put into place and aligns to our fourth quarter plan. So those are the big things around instructional model, case counts, vaccination, and I'm going to ask the admin team to give additional updates. Carol, do you have anything?
I would just reiterate again that we're spending a significant amount of time working through what would be the best utilization of those ESSER funds for our students. I would also share with you that our BKD internal audit firm has continued progression on their work.
We will bring to you, I anticipate, the purchasing audit work. We originally had it scheduled for March, but our pattern is to provide that audit to you in closed session and then publicly share it for your acceptance. That will happen now at the month of April, for those 2 meetings. And also the human resources audit work has continued over all of this period of time, and they're able to engage with team members through Zoom meetings and remain appropriately distanced and that type of thing. So we're anticipating that report coming forward in the months to come as well.
So I'll just give you a quick update about Explore. So we're obviously in the midst of enrolling students now for summer programming. We have enrolled just over 4,700 students so far, which is great. There will be new promotion videos coming out later this week to continue to encourage families to enroll seated. That is our priority, is that we can get our kids back into our school systems in a seated environment for Explore. So we're excited about that opportunity. And want you to know too that there's work in place about summer intervention within the Explore sessions so that we can provide our students additional supports as they return back to us, knowing that learning loss is going to be something that impacts a lot of our students. So that's the update around Explore. I won't steal Penny's thunder. I think she's going to talk to you about hiring related to Explore, so I'll toss that part to her. The other piece will be around assessment. So if you've been following at all, Desi's bulletins related to how we will provide end of course exams as well as the math test to our students. So we will be asking our students to complete state assessment testing. The difference in what we've done with iReady versus MAP is that we did have the ability to have our students take the iReady, which is our internal assessment package, virtually, right? So they didn't have to report on site. However, the state is requiring, of course, that our students will come to us to take the MAP assessment. So we have a team together that's working on how that will best happen for our students that have elected full-time virtual. So just a reminder, the most recent DESI memo was March 20 of 21, just suspending those for state and federal accountability. So there's those pieces around it. But that will give us some identifying information around pandemic and how we've achieved in that time frame. So again, all students have to be tested in compliance with board policy, so we're going to maintain that and work through plans to make that as easy as we can for our full-time virtual students. So that's just a little bit on assessment. That's really in the works still. And then the last piece I'll just give you an update on the learning side of the house is related to fall enrollment and or scheduling. So our secondary folks are well into that process, and students have been making course selections of studies, and now we're on the master scheduling side of that. So using that information now to drive what's happening at our sites. We have asked our families to be accessing Home Access Center to let us know about their enrollment as well. So making sure they get on their update. We know that in a pandemic time, as in regular time, things happen to our families. They shift residents, they move around, or they make other selections. And so it's important for us to have that in-time data. It will be especially important that we have that with relationship to transportation. So parents need to be accessing our virtual platform to make those changes. If they can't do that, our sites are working specifically with families and setting up times for them to come to do that on site so they don't miss the opportunity for them to let us know who's going to be coming back with us. So we're working through a lot of things on the learning side, as always, but I think progressing as we should be, regardless of the fact that we've been educating in the pandemic. So.
A lot of moving parts to finish this year, as well as the assessment model, and now it's really building for summer and the fall. So, Charles, go ahead.
So the state requires full-time virtual students to return to buildings they've not been in at any point this year to take the MAP test. Correct. I'll just leave that there.
You heard that correctly, yes.
Yes.
You did hear that correctly.
You want to go with objection?
Something else, yes.
Okay then.
Yes.
And we'll do our best we can to provide the logistics and the safety environments for them to re-enter with us. Some may choose not to, right? We understand that, but we'll do the best we can to offer it at a multitude of ways and be flexible. But this will be a challenge if you've got 20% of kids still in full virtual to get them on site to do their tests. Now, not every one of those kids, because we may not test K2, right? We test 3-8 and then just a EOC's 912, so it's not every one of those, but it is a big majority, right? So.
Oh, so I lied. I won't leave it there. what does a student at a virtual charter school do for his or her MAP test?
I believe, I mean, they expect virtual, so we don't have any virtual charter schools in Missouri by statute. We have charter schools.
Right. But if they're taking online...
They would have the same expectation to come to site to take the test. All state assessments are to be given on site, period.
Yeah, I mean, they're a public school.
Yeah, no matter what. So, same expectation would be for them.
But that's
Even if-
ironic that you've got 20% of your kids in virtual, which is the 20% of the kids that I'm worried about, how well they've done on virtual that may elect not to take.
May not show up for the
May not show up to take the MAP test, and now I'm in the dark.
It's really important, and that's why the formative assessment system's been good for us, right? We at least have a pulse on those students, right? And can share some of that information and have teachers that can react to that. Even if they're taking it online at home, it's better than no test on site because they're not willing to show back up. So, I would say this is not just the state's expectation, this is federal expectation at this point, that the test must proceed. I do believe that there is flexibility at the federal level to apply on the delivery method of the assessment, but our assessment system is only deliverable on an on-site with model. So Missouri has selected all on-site. So, and it's not asking for a waiver for any home delivery.
Okay.
All right. Dr. Holt, anything else? Stephen?
So the communications team is excited to be working closely with Dr. Layton, our next superintendent, on virtual introductions with the community until she was able to be in person in Springfield for in-person visits. We had the first of 3 virtual introductions today. It was held via Zoom, and we had 125 people that joined us for a 30-minute conversation and Q&A with Dr. Layton. Went very well. We'll have a second Zoom introduction on Thursday, and we have about a similar number of people signed up to participate in that. And then finally, the third virtual opportunity will be a Facebook live stream on social media that will happen next Wednesday, March 31st. So there'll be 3 of those virtual opportunities, and then later in the spring, when we know what dates Dr. Layton will be available to be in town, we'll have in-person engagement opportunities as well. The communications team right now is working in collaboration with other leaders to communicate on vaccination opportunities for our staff. We've continued to provide sign-up opportunities and the latest information to our team, and then we will be communicating at the end of the month regarding the official last day of school. As you know, each year we wait until after spring break and the long-term weather forecast is more assured, and we announce that, and that will be forthcoming.
Steve, Penny?
Dr. Holt mentioned our Summer Explore enrollment, and that is more than 4,700 at present for our student count, and you know that we need staff to support those students. To date, we've hired over 300 employees to support June Explore sessions, and we are nearing 200 support for our July session, but we do have additional needs for June and July staffing, particularly in teaching and paraprofessional supports, and so we'd ask for your support in getting that word out and encouraging individuals who are interested in supporting our summer learning program to apply and allow us the opportunity to get them connected. We also have currently posted a number of teaching positions for next school year, our 2022 school year. Those are primarily secondary, communication arts, science, special education, math, and some of our specials like drama and music. And we will continue to be assessing needs on a daily basis with Dr. Holt and her team, and we'll continue to post positions as we identify those that may need to be posted. And so please encourage those interested in teaching with SPS to continue to watch our website and to apply at the first opportunity. I'd also like to mention that on our operations side, we do continue to hire for current year and future needs, and we have nutrition services opportunities. We have opportunities with our custodial department and with transportation, and we do have hiring events upcoming. April 7th, we have a nutrition services likely to be a drive-through event at Delaware Elementary. on April 21st, we have a drive-in event with our transportation department where individuals will have an opportunity to experience driving a bus if they want to come engage in that opportunity. And then our custodial department hosts weekly open interviews at the General Services Center. And so anyone that you know who might be interested in those positions, please encourage them to reach out, and for more information, we will get them plugged in. And lastly, I want to celebrate our substitute coverage. As you all know, we partner with PenMac Educational Staffing on substitute coverage, and we've brought you regular updates throughout this school year. Our fill rate in March is 99%, February was 99%, and January was 98% for all positions across the district that they support us with filling. And so that's we've had good strong rates even when some of our neighbors have had some difficulty, but these are exceptionally high rates, and that's a credit to our leaders in our system and to our staff members who have worked with us to find creative ways to support filling those positions, and to PenMac for the work that they've done. So we want to publicly say thank you to all of those individuals and entities for their efforts these last many months.
So Penny, when you mentioned the Explore teacher hiring for both June and July, so do you know how many of those are already our SPS teachers? Because I know they typically get the first opportunity. That's my first question. And the second one is are you already on the hunt for outside SPS teachers? Is there a need for outside SPS teachers for summer school?
So there is a need for external. Presently, of those that we have hired, 27 are external teachers that are in the process of being hired. What I don't know is how many of them.
From June and July?
Total. What I don't know is of the more than 300 and the nearly 200, most of those are teaching positions, but I can't tell you exactly how many of those are teaching. But the majority are. And of the total, 27 are external thus far.
Me, I have a question. It's regarding, if I remember correctly, PenMac, or I don't know whose requirement was to change the requirements for sub-teachers, their training requirements due to the pandemic, or, I think it was due to the pandemic. Are those still in place, or have they gone back to normal?
So what you're referring to is the temporary change in certification requirements for substitutes, which the state was in the process of implementing prior to the pandemic. And so it was really in response to substitute shortage across the nation and an effort to identify qualified candidates and alternate routes to certification other than the 60 college hours. So finding programs that would provide training and supports in important critical areas that would qualify individuals. That does remain in effect, and I believe it is 2 more years. I'm going to get the date wrong, but those who obtained their certification in that process. So right now, I can't go get certification through that process, but if I got my certification, that certification will continue to be in full force and in effect until it expires, and I believe that's 3 years. It could be 2, but I believe it's 3 years where we're able to utilize the services of those individuals. And I will tell you that we have utilized quite a number, and I will have to get with PenMac on that. And the quality has been high quality, and so we've benefited from that rule and the opportunity to utilize that this school year.
There you go. Thanks, Penny. LA, anything to add?
Actually, I did forget about a couple of things as far as empowerment groups. With school going back for 5 days, we've been able to be more active in our department with empowerment groups at the elementary level and at the middle school level, and which has been a really nice thing. And also a pilot program that we have, the brother to brother program that we have at the high school level has been going really well with Central and Glendale this year. So those are the 2 big pieces I have.
Thank you, sir. For the legislation, is that okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so just a few things. The good news is we were on spring break, the legislature was also, so that slowed things down for a little bit as they took a breath and came back this week just like we did. So education hearings kicked back up today, so stay tuned. You'll get your regular MSBA updates. If you want to look at the first half, remember the 2 things that got out of actual one branch or the other, or open enrollment and vouchers, both out of the House on slim votes on, very slim on voucher, pretty aggressive vote on open enrollment. So those will go to the Senate at some point, if the Senate chooses to take those up. Senate Bill 55 is the one that we still, as a vehicle for an omnibus bill that we're monitoring closely. Hasn't come back up yet at this point, but we do expect it to show back up. Most of the time in the week prior to break was spent on tax issues. Both Senate and House passed versions of Wayfair, which is online tax recovery. We're one of the only, I think, 2 states that doesn't have that method of approach at this point. They also spent some significant time on gas tax for roads and those things. Something to watch, and you might have saw it in your last MSBA update, is the federal prohibition on state tax cuts that come as part of the package with some of the stimulus. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch the legislature pass out or play out, because it includes prohibitions on reducing tax rates, offering rebates, or creating deductions or tax credit programs if you're taking stimulus dollars. So this will be an interesting next 8-12 weeks as we see those things kind of play out. Others to watch are the same ones that we've seen before, right? It's nothing new at this point. So I think the issues that we saw before spring break will be the ones that come up. The budget has not left the House yet, so it's a little slower than I typically think, but it will likely be coming out soon, and then we'll see where we go from there. MSBA, the Legislative Forum, if you haven't noted that, it's on April 12th, so for anybody that is interested, you can do it virtually or you can do it in person, so please let Kathy know if you're interested in attending. I know I'll try to attend on that day if possible, but if any other board members want to be there, we'd love to have you, either in person or virtual. So you should have registration information, but Kathy can take care of that for you. So that's it, legislative.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Jungman and team. Our next agenda item is board comments. Are there any board comments at this time?
I'll say one.
Okay.
I think it's important to mention that one of our high school basketball teams took the state championship this week, the Chiefs, which was awesome. And the Lady Chiefs took 3rd place in the state. So, and both teams represented very well in their sportsmanship and their play. So they deserve a shout.
Yes, yes. Very exciting.
Indeed. I am wanting to take a moment to recognize 2 of our board members who will be leaving us as their last meeting here with us on the board. I'm finishing my first year on the board, and I've been doing quite a bit of reflection as I have tried to understand what I've learned and what I've gained. And the reality is that I joined the board during a very difficult time. I joined the board right at the beginning of a pandemic. And so I don't think I've had a real traditional experience on the board. However, I've taken some time to meet with both Bruce and Jerry this past week, just to kind of, learn from their long-term experience on the board. And I just want you both to know how much I appreciate the time that you took to meet with me and to, give me some wisdom and insight about my next 2 years on the board so that I can be the most effective school board member while I'm here. Thank you.
You're here.
Thank you, Sharita. Yes, Charles.
Clearly, we're going to miss Jerry and Bruce, there's no question. And the board table is not a place for campaigning. Right? I have great respect for all 7 people who have signed and gotten the signatures to run in this campaign. And I will say nothing about the 3 people for whom I will be proud to vote in a couple of weeks. That said, I think the disgraceful text message that blew up many of our phones and has been circulated on social media since then, frankly, deserves to be condemned in the strongest possible terms. The only thing worse than bigotry and homophobia is cowardly, anonymous bigotry and homophobia. Ironically, there is one line from that message that deserves to be repeated, and that is, we can do better. I surely hope so. We must do better. We are better than this, and Springfield and SPS deserve far better than this. Shame on whoever sent that out.
You're here.
Thank you, Charles. Any other board comments at this time?
I'm going to give it a try.
Okay. Well, and I will say that our official honoring is at our next board meeting, is at our reorg meeting.
Will they be there?
So we have time set aside for the April reorg meeting where we will be honoring those who will be leaving us at that time.
Awesome. I shall wait.
She'll work on her script.
I'm already
That's right.
working on that one.
That's right.
I have one more comment. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
My other comment is that I want to recognize the people who come and speak to the board. I personally appreciate hearing from you all about what your concerns are. I do think that there should be an opportunity for us to have conversation and dialogue, and I will be advocating for that to happen at some point in some form. I don't know if this is the space or the place for that to happen, but what I do know is that there does need to be more transparency and conversation between not just the board, but the district and the community. And so it is something that I am advocating for, and I don't know how that will look. It may not be in a regular board meeting, but it does need to happen, and I want you all to know how much I appreciate you coming to speak. I have been advocating for others in the community to come and speak because we do need to hear what the community has to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other? Yeah, Bruce.
No, I've got 27 years pinned up that, so for the 13th, I don't know how much time you've got. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, because if that, and I don't have, the one thing I thought I might do is present a PowerPoint, but I'm not going
I can help you make one.
I'm just not going to do it. I just.
Limited to 30 slides, man.
Yeah, only 30 slides, so I'll just wait.
Kathy will time you, yeah.
And see, and this is in my discussion with Sharita, see, we as a board at one time went out to high schools and had open sessions there and did that to facilitate 2 or 3 could be at each meeting and do that. So that has been, it's not like we've never done these things, we have done them. We've been out there, so then you're not limited to time, and you're not, you can come and discuss any topic you wanted to. So those are things that have been, I don't know if you'd call, they were based on the exact same thing that we're talking about now. So historically, we have done that in different forms, and I remember being at high schools as well as middle schools with other board members just to hear and dialogue and hear concerns, and those were productive. That's what I would say, productive.
We won't take that away from the time you get next time.
Thank you.
That's right, that's right. Our upcoming meetings we have here, I know April 8th through the 10th, we have NSBA online, and myself, Dr. Frederick, Dr. Thomas Tate, and Jerry Lee have registered for that. Tuesday, April 13th is our reorganizational meeting, followed by our study session meeting. Monday, April 19th, I don't know if you have this on your calendar yet, is the Foundation 2021 Celebrate SPS Banquet. The in-person attendance will be limited, and I believe it'll also be streamed online as well. Thursday, April 22nd, 6 p.m., MSBA Spring Regional Meeting. It'll be held at Logan Rogersville. And then Tuesday, April 27th, our regular scheduled meeting. So April is the month of conferences, as you recall, and celebrating our teachers as well. So I think there's a couple on there that maybe we can have Kathy send us out some calendar invites, and so I'll make note of that to make sure we can get those on our Outlook as well. At this time, our plus deltas, if you want to put that on a sticky note and give that to Kathy before you leave, we always look at those, our plus deltas. At this time, we have executive session to go into, and the recommended action is that the board meet in executive session following this meeting to discuss personnel matters as provided in section 610.21, subsections 3 and 13 of the revised statute of Missouri.
So moved.
Sharita with the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Jerry with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Motion passes. That concludes the public portion of our business meeting.